the NCAA has been kind of rapidly evolving as we've seen some of the penalties come down in the state of Iowa, in Alabama. They've had some big stories related to betting on college sports over the last few months, and we're seeing now that the NCAA might be changing in real time.
Yeah, what you call evolving, I'd like to call sort of a Tennessee-Alabama level of goalpost moving. That game a few years ago, the goalpost ended up in like someone's dorm room or something. This is the second time in the last like 3 or 4 months where the NCAA has decided that it needs to change its penalties for students, or student athletes rather, betting on games that they're involved in. Our colleague Mike Mazzia has a great story on this about these changes. They're expected to go into effect by the end of October, which would essentially change it from a dollars-based penalty system. It used to be like if you bet $200, you lose 10% of the season, to an offense-based penalty system, which is very interesting considering they've tried to maintain this kind of no tolerance policy for betting. Now it's an offense-based system, but these rules, which are expected to kind of be adopted by the end of the month, they might change a little bit, but this is the outline that Mike reported on. It's the first offense, there's no ban. You're just required to take some sort of education class and learn about the dangers of addiction, dangers of sports betting, integrity, everything, why you shouldn't be doing this. The second offense is potential game ban. It's kind of unspecified, and it's supposed to depend on the money back to what the current system is that was just changed. And then the third offense would be potentially up to a full season of eligibility lost. So essentially what I'm taking away here is if you bet once, it seems like kind of a slap on the wrist, honestly. If you bet twice, you might be banned, but it doesn't really depend on how much money, because if you bet another time, only then will you lose a full season of eligibility. And obviously, this comes when you have all these investigations and scandals that have been going on over the past year at Iowa State, Cincinnati, Alabama's baseball coach got fired. And these are supposed to be retroactive, like the last changes were. So this potentially could change the situation for some athletes that are sitting on the sidelines right now, or in the middle of a court case trying to defend themselves. So it's pretty interesting that, like you're saying, it's changing in real time. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe all those instances of the investigations and violations were involved like legal sports books as opposed to offshore sports books. So it's interesting that those sports books have been working with the NCAA. Obviously, the president, Charlie Baker, came out this week and said, this is an effort to modernize our betting policy. Obviously, a lot of the policies the governing body had in place existed before the world of legal sports betting, before even the world of LSR with daily fantasy, and we're kind of just rolled over. And if you know anything about the NCAA, is they're very resistant to change. I mean, we still only have a 4-team playoff, so the fact that they're now every couple of months changing the betting rules, it's pretty interesting. But you're kind of wondering, why are they changing them again and again and again, and just kind of tweaking and swapping out an offense system for a dollar system, and are they going to keep tweaking it more? So it's something to watch going forward, what they do, kind of, if they change it or they keep it.
A couple of points that come out of that for me, Sam. The first of which is the rapidly evolving nature. These are the sorts of things that happen when you've been resistant to making the changes over the course of time, right? The NCAA has had the opportunity, going at the very least back to 2018 when PASPA was repealed, to evolve with the times, but they didn't really take the steps at that time. It's looking more reactive than proactive when we see all of these coming down on the backs of what's happened in Iowa at Iowa State, which, by the way, are more about criminal investigations than they are about NCAA investigations, right? These are all coming out of the Iowa Gaming and Racing Commission, and that's ultimately going over to criminal charges in the state of Iowa. And you're right, Sam, it has everything to do with regulated sports books. It has everything to do with the fact that this is the point of the regulated market. The point of the regulated market is that these things have been happening for a long time. The wrong angle to look at this is to say, because these sports books are more available, these things are happening more. It's not necessarily false, but when you look at where's the correlation and causation, the correlation and causation is the fact that you're catching more of these things because you have a system that is designed to catch them. And it's not just designed to be punitive, it's a system that is ultimately designed to make sure those who are supposed to be betting are allowed to, and those who aren't allowed to. And you talked about the education component in there. What's interesting to me is when you hear about that first offense and you talk about penalties where it involves education and the dangers and so on. And I know that a lot of conferences and a lot of schools are increasing the amount of education that they do around sports betting. But if that's the first step, it almost says to me, well, if you're going to take that step with those who commit a first offense, why ever let it get to a first offense? That education should be happening for everyone. If you have the access to deliver that education, then I'm assuming it is a higher level of education than what you're giving to student athletes at the beginning of every season, because otherwise, why would that be something that you would bring in as a level of penalty? So I'll actually give just a slight pushback on the idea of the changing in real time and what that means, and say that I'm okay with them looking at policies and saying, maybe we didn't get it right the first time, and maybe we need to do better with this, because look what just happened in the NFL, right? You had a policy that took out guys like Jameson Williams for essentially what? Betting in the wrong location, placing a legal bet on a legal app that had nothing to do with NFL football, and he was banned for 6 games. Thankfully, with the new policy, it goes down to 4 for him and 2 for anybody who does it on a first offense in the future. So I think there are positives to be taken out of this by the changes happening at the NCAA level. I just feel like at the same time, we still have plenty of room to grow when it comes to getting it right on number of offenses, how much is wagered, so on and so on. And the NCAA did acknowledge within this that they know that they have student athletes who are of legal age who otherwise would be allowed to place a wager. The NFL has acknowledged pretty much the same, and I think anything that speaks to that reality is a good place to start your policy. It's a good place to start when you talk about integrity. It's a good place to start when you talk about treating student athletes and then professionals as young adults and adults when these things happen. So that's my soapbox. I'll step back off it.